70% of divorce filings are filed by women. We have a tendency to stereotype women as being these doughy victims that have no agency, and men as like dopey predators, right? It's Marge Simpson, incredibly high character, never makes a mistake, and it's Homer Simpson, who is an idiot, but deep down an okay guy. And all life is Homer coming over his idiocy, while Marge is just this incredibly high character person. And I can statistically prove that there's a lot of good women and there's a lot of good men, and there's some bad women and some bad men. But women, I believe, and we don't like to talk about this openly and honestly, value economic security more in a mate than men do. 75% of women say that economic viability is a key criteria in a mate. For men, it's only 25%.
Wanting the woman to make money or have security.
Or that it's important.
I mean, the relationship.
Yeah, in some, women are much more attracted to a man because of his financial security than a man would be to a woman because of her financial security. And then it gets speedball in online dating, which is where everyone is meeting now. And the problem is that people don't give each other enough chance, especially, quite frankly, women who, if you talk to married couples, 75% of them will say that initially one was less attracted or interested in the other. And it's almost always that the woman was less attracted to the man. Women have a much finer filter than men because the downside of sex is much greater for women. And they have a much stronger instinct to find someone who can protect their young. And so they are much choosier than men. So guys are driven by aesthetics initially online, but they're less choosy. Oh, she looks cute, or she looks nice, or she looks like she works out. Swipe right, swipe right, swipe right. Women are choosier. In addition, we have this unfortunate trend in society where young men are falling further faster than in any time in history. And women, generally speaking, mate socioeconomically horizontally and up. I'm sorry. Women mate horizontally and up socioeconomically, men horizontally and down. And the pool of men horizontal and up is shrinking. Meanwhile, and this is wonderful, no group of people has ascended faster globally than women. There are more women seeking tertiary education now than men globally. And when you look at some nations, don't like women going to college, that's a remarkable stat. The number of women elected to parliament globally, the elected body, has doubled in the last 30 years. There are more women, single women in the US now that own homes than single men. There's going to be potentially nearly 2-to-1 female to male college grads in the next 5 years.
Wow.
And by the way, we don't want to do anything that gets in the way of that. That's amazing. But what we also have to acknowledge is that if we don't figure out a way to produce more economically and emotionally viable young men, we're going to have a lack of household formation. Because regardless of the Hallmark Channel movie you see, women, generally speaking, aren't interested in men who aren't aren't socioeconomically at the same level or superior to them.
Interesting.
Oh, there's all kinds. When the woman starts making, or the wife in the relationship starts making more money than the man, the guy is 3 times more likely to be on erectile dysfunction drugs.
Really?
And a lot of that is his own issue, his own weird sense of masculinity and his own insecurity. But again, those 70% of divorce filings filed by women, and we never want to have an honest conversation about this, right? Because anything that in any way might portray one sex as not being our vision of how the sex is portrayed in media means you're anti-women. I don't think that's true at all. 70% of those divorce filings, and the number one source of that divorce filing, there's really 3 things. He has an emotional breakdown, he loses his business, or he declares bankruptcy.
That's the biggest cause for women wanting to file for a divorce.
When he's no longer a viable provider.
Wow.
People think it's values or infidelity. It's not. It's almost always related to money.
Wow.
Money creates kind of opportunistic infection. It's sort of like there's just more likely, and most anger, most households coming apart, financial stress usually is creating the context of anger and disappointment.
The underlying issue behind why is someone's resentful or angry or stressed or overwhelmed.
It lowers the immunity system of everybody around the household.
Wow.
So
when a woman is with a man that makes less than them, can they truly be sexually turned on and feel emotionally safe as well?
I think so. But the data shows it's not as easy. Guys can find and partner with. Guys have no trouble being attracted to a woman who is not financially secure. Now, some men are, like that. I'm making huge reductive generalizations here, but there's some data around this. Women, if you're on Tinder and you're a guy who's making $80,000 and is 5'9", I'm sorry, making $130,000 and you're 5'9", you're as attractive to a woman as a guy who's 6'2", making $80,000. So it's about $10,000 per inch. So if everyone talks about height, your ability to signal, women are attracted, generally speaking, the research shows, to men based on 3 reasons. The third is kindness. They don't want someone who's going to be a good person. They're impressed by men who are good to their parents and kind and go out of their way to help people when there's no reciprocal expectation. The second is intelligence, because the smarter you are, the more likely you are to make good decisions and protect your family's offspring. And by the way, the fastest way to communicate intelligence is humor. I've always said if you can make a woman laugh, you can kiss her.
Wow.
And then the most important thing, though, to women, and people don't like to admit this, is the man's ability to signal future resources. It's not even he has to be rich now, but he has to have his act together such that he looks like he will be a decent provider. And the number of people, the number of men we're producing that qualify in this category is shrinking as women get it's the high heels effect. Just as 50% of women say they won't date a man shorter than them, I bet it's 80%. They're just not as drawn to men who are smaller than them because it's very instinctual. I need someone who will protect my young. Metaphorically, women are getting taller every day. They're killing it.
Financially, education, intelligence, opportunities, resources.
Women are killing it, and it's amazing. We shouldn't do anything that gets in the way of that. The question is, how do we lift up men? Who wants more economically and emotionally viable men? Women.
Why are men not doing as well in today's society? And versus women continue to thrive, which is a great thing, but why aren't men thriving equally or at the same pace?
So I'm parroting Richard Reeves' great work of Boys to Men. There's a lot of reasons. Biologically, men mature later. Their prefrontal cortex is literally 18 to 24 months behind a girl's. So two seniors applying to college, a boy and a girl, 17-year-old boy and girl, essentially the girl is competing against a 15-year-old.
Oh my gosh.
So they think about school. What are the behaviors we promote in school? Be organized, be a pleaser, sit still. Basically, education is set up for girls.
I couldn't do it.
And there's a lot of shame when boys, just...
Man, it's so challenging.
My 13-year-old, the idea of my 13-year-old sitting in still for an hour and a half and listening to French verbs, I think it's literally torture for him.
Yeah.
So they're biologically inferior. They're also emotionally and mentally less strong. While boys are physically stronger, they're emotionally and mentally much weaker. So we have the second most single-family households in America as any country in the world. We're second to Sweden.
Wow.
And when we say single-family home, single-parent home, 92% of the time it's a mom. What's interesting is the girl in that household has similar outcomes: college attainment, self-harm. They seem to be doing just fine with just a single mother. A boy falls off the tracks. The moment he loses a male role model, he becomes much more likely to be incarcerated, addicted, or kill himself. It's also a really, really scary stat. 2 15-year-olds sexually molested, a boy and a girl. The boy is 10 times more likely to kill himself later in life. That's not to say either crime is any less heinous, but what it ends up is that boys are emotionally and mentally much weaker than girls. And the single point of failure is when they lose a role model, a male role model. And there is an entire generation of men, the dad's gone, 70 to 90% of people in schools are women. There's more female per capita fighter pilots than male kindergarten teachers.
Wow.
There are just very few men in primary education. So you have a whole generation of boys who are growing up with absolutely no contact with men. And so when I think about what it means to be masculine, you take care of your stuff. You're together, you have a plan, you're kind, you have surplus value. You begin to take care of your family. You're a protector. You're a provider. You start to contribute to your community. I think the ultimate expression of masculinity, it's more a call for action, is for a man to get involved in the life of a kid that's not his. And there's especially a huge need for young boys. And my mom was always really good at this. Her boyfriend stayed in my life. I had a guy across the hall come over one day and introduce himself to my mom. And then the next weekend he came over and said, would your son like to learn how to horseback ride? And I used to go out to a ranch in Calabasas with this guy for the better part of 2 years every other weekend. And he taught me how to ride a horse.
Wow.
And he talked to me about stuff. And the thing is, you don't have to be a baller. You just have to be a guy trying to live a virtuous life. And quite frankly, Michael Jackson and Catholic Church have screwed it up for these men because there's an air of suspicion when a young man wants to, or a man wants to get involved in a boy's life.
Right.
There's a feeling, well, what's wrong with him? And here's the thing. 99.9% of men have a feeling of paternal and fraternal love.
Yes.
And sometimes they don't have a place to give it yet. And what I would urge all men to do is there's an enormous cadre of young boys who need men in their life and aren't getting it.